Hey there, Chad here, and this is Pro Cycling Manager 23. This is my Pro Cyclist playthrough and tutorial. This is episode 9 of that series, and it's been a while since I've put one of these out, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Probably most importantly is that not a whole lot of exciting things have happened. I've run 10, 12 days of races, I guess, stages anyway, and there really hasn't been too much to comment on. Most of those stages, I have been a domestique working for my teammates and the leaders of my team. In one or two cases, that hasn't happened, and I will point out a couple of those here, and we'll show some of the endings of some of those races. But really, other than leveling up, I think at level 4 at this point, there isn't a whole lot that's happened that is really noteworthy. So I will continue with this series as we work through some of this. There has been also a delay because I ran into some technical problems. I started noticing some corruption in my playthrough that's not the one that I'm recording, and I started getting a lot of garbage characters and things like that. I was concerned about that for this playthrough because that could be difficult to follow at some point if things start getting messed up. So I had cleared that one out. I uninstalled the game, reinstalled it to make sure it was nothing that was happening on my system that could be causing some of that. It seems that this particular game save is okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue with it. There is the added difficulty that this particular rider is not leveling up very quickly. Usually I'm at least at level 5 by this point, and I've just finally hit level 4, and I continue to be put into a position where I can make about 8 points per run if I follow the rules that the team wants. I also have the opportunity to try to go for wins and get maybe some points through stage wins and things like that, but I haven't had a really solid ride where that's really been in the cards. I'm fighting to finish in the top 20 right now. One thing you'll notice here is this is the Gran Camino Tour, and this is stage 1. I was given the role of carte blanche. I can do whatever I want, basically. And then I finished this race fairly well, and after having finished well, in the next stage, they moved me to team leader. And so I do want you to see that sometimes you don't start out as the hope for the general contention, but eventually it lands on your shoulders. And so this was one of those times where that does happen. Let's go ahead and look at the different results of these races. This is the final kilometer of the first stage of the Gran Camino. Apologize if I'm butchering the name. I had a fairly strong finish here. I think it was 21st. Just outside of the top 20, which is what I was really kind of going for. With carte blanche, that was pretty good. And this finish led to them kicking me over to the hope for the general classification. I think I said general contention earlier. But in stage 2, they are asking me to try to compete for the general classification. So not a bad finish there. So here's the start of stage 2, and as you can see, they are now counting on me for the final general classification. Stay on the defensive into closing kilometers, and if terrain permits, try to pick up some time. So that's what we do in this race. Now, since I had control of the entire team, what I decided to do was protect to the riders that had finished better in the previous stage with the riders that had finished worse. And we set that up for a while. The stage ends on an uphill. I was hoping I could close down some time on some of the other competitors. And in the meantime, there's this nice downhill for the majority of the beginning of the race and then a flat. So here's where I'm setting up that sprint train, and I was trying to leave Chad, Missouri there roughly in the middle. What I've kind of learned, I don't know if this is factual or not, but it feels like if I build a sprint train and I put the rider that I'm trying to protect the most at the very end, it looks to me like the heart rate is a little higher for that rider than a rider that's 2 slots in front of him. So I typically, what I'm doing here is putting Chad, Missouri there in the middle-ish of the sprint train to try to protect him best. And if you watch this over time, it just, to me, it feels like his numbers will stay a little lower. His heart rate will stay a little lower longer than the guys that are actually behind him. And of course, I'm not seeing that play out right this second, but in some other stages I've seen that where it's 10 beats, which is appreciable over a longer ride. And we followed this on for quite a while. And then here we have the base of that climb. I've got my sprint train. I'm kind of disassembling it here. They're going to work on their own. And there's about 2.5 kilometers left, and we are right up front. It looked like it was going to go pretty well. I'm handling the hill pretty decently. Down to 1.5 kilometers. But then my red bar runs out. And that's the end of that for me. So with 0.5 kilometer left, I've been passed by about a dozen riders, and I'm just falling backwards at this point. So that was mistimed, not the best strategy for me, and of course we're in the slow motion of the actual finish. And we end up taking 18th. Now this was stage 3, and as you can see, the peloton disintegrated. There's only 10 riders in the peloton at this point, and I was in A1 for quite a while. Caught them here, and I ended up with a pretty solid finish, but you can see I've got teammates all the way back in A27 right now. This really spread out badly. Those hills and mountains, I guess, really crushed the competition, but I wasn't able to make a really strong finish. I think, yeah, we finished 17th here. So fairly decent finish there, but we're definitely not going to make the top 10 in the general classification for the entire tour. But still, strong finishes. I didn't have an objective for that stage, so I didn't earn any points. And then stage 4 is a time trial, and it is going to ask me to finish here in the top 20 of this stage. Now I'm pretty good at time trials, so this was a fun one to run. This time trial had an initial climb, then a long downhill to a flat, and it ends on a small upswing. It gets pretty steep, I think 10% at the very end. But as you can see, going into the climb here, I thought I was doing pretty well. As I approach the stage where they kind of measure your time, I don't think there's points there, but it just gives you a point of reference. I hit 4th as I go through there, and that feels pretty good. And it's downhill from here. Felt like I was falling a little behind on the amount of power I was using there, and I try to catch that up. And to make a long story short, I end up leaving a little bit on the table. As I hit that climb, you can kind of see it coming there. So we go from a downhill to a serious uphill. I hit 18% there, and I ended up in 9th, and that dropped with just a few riders after me. I ended up in 13th place at the end of the stage. So that felt pretty good. So in the end, that finish, 13th, with the 2nd place in the young rider classification, gave me 21 points. Can't complain at that, but the points have been really hard to come by up to here, and so I'm kind of scraping for those as much as I can. Much the same over the next couple of weeks of racing. A lot of just trying to grab points where I can. Did have the month end, which gave me, I think, 50 points, and I finally hit level 4, and I'll show you where I am with regards to my build. I finally leveled up during the Tour of Roads after having a long breakaway of over 150 kilometers. In fact, it gave me 2 milestones. That gave me a ton of points. And that combined with the stage objective of riding on that breakaway gave me enough points to just eke into level 4. So what did I do with my level 4 points? My only option in terms of progression was to take climber, and that worked out well. That gave me some mountain Gave me a little bit of stamina and recovery, some resistance. I really have been wanting to move up sprinting a little bit, so that's going to have to wait just a little longer. And when I jumped into skills, I realized I had never used my previous skill point for making it to level 3. So I went ahead and put both points into attentiveness, which will increase the experience I get monthly by a total of 10 points. It's 5 points per level. So each month will be 10 extra points moving towards the following level. And that will be helpful in the long term. Beyond that, nothing else of note has really happened. Like I said, several other races, but no real close finishes. In fact, a couple of pretty sobering finishes, to say the least. A couple of times looked like I was going to do really, really well, and it just fell apart at the end. And so I need to work on my strategy a little bit with this particular rider. I will continue to work on this playthrough, though, until we get to some of the other things that have to be done in the game, like signing a new contract for the following year and learning how teams scout you and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and play forward to some of those things, and we'll start to re-record them at that point. Hope you picked something up in this one. Again, not a whole lot to say about it, but we'll continue the grind. And thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. And until next time, fair travels.